So I bought my house out in Tradition in Port St. Lucie a bit before I retired to become a full-time Florida resident. Luckily, it was before the peak of the COVID boom. Now, despite not buying at the height of the market, I still found property taxes expensive. Now, there's no income tax in Florida, which helps out, but it still was, I thought, way more than it should be.
Taxes that are impacting Floridians right now, property taxes are the most significant. I can tell you when people talk to me about taxes, I would say it's like 99% talk about property taxes. That is just something that people are concerned about.
Hey, I'm Stephen Kimos, a local realtor here in beautiful Port St. Lucie, Florida, out on my walk on a beautiful 78-degree morning. Now, like all of us, I like to think I'm also a voice of reason in this over-opinionated, politically charged world. Now, whether or not that's true or not, you have to ask my wife. But anyway, this is my take on the latest on the effort to control property taxes in Port St. Lucie and in Florida in general. So take a look at this. This is my actual homesteaded property tax bill in Florida. If you are familiar with the homestead law, it basically states that $50,000 will be deducted from your total taxable assessment. And it also caps the amount of tax assessment you can rise every year at 3%. Now, the homestead law was updated in 2008 to bring it to that $50,000 exemption amount. Now, here's a quick question for you. Is that current $50,000, that exemption, still worth $50,000? Of course not. If you take an average of 2 or 3% inflation over 16 years, it's worth much less. Now, that 2008 update should have been tied to inflation to keep it current, but it wasn't. So now one of the bills under consideration would raise the exemption to $100,000. Now let's hope that passes. To learn more about the laws currently under consideration, check out my video linked in the description below. Now, Florida government officials have heard the public, and Governor Ron DeSantis has once again taken a strong stance on property taxes, outlining his vision for reform and relief. In a recent speech, DeSantis laid out a plan that could reshape the state's property tax system, offering homeowners a break while securing alternative methods of revenue and different sources of revenue. So what's his philosophy, and how does the plan work, and can he pull it off? Let's try and break it down a little.
Property taxes are an anomaly because, they're not voluntary. Consumption taxes are basically voluntary. I go to the supermarket, most of the stuff you buy there's not taxed, right? But if I buy some other stuff that is not considered a staple, I just know I'm going to pay tax on it. If I go buy a big screen TV, I'm going to pay tax on it, and I can choose to buy that or not buy that. But you just basically, for subsisting and living on your own property, on your own parcel of land, your own home, particularly people that own it free and clear of any encumbrances, you got to just keep writing a check to the government just for the privilege of using your own property. And that's an anomaly. That's not the way good tax policy should be. It certainly undercuts the idea of private property that you own outside the reach of the government. And you effectively are wards of the local government because you're having to pay rent to them just to be able to exercise your basic rights to own and enjoy property. And we don't do that on other things. When I buy that big screen TV, I'm not paying a tax on it every year. No, I put it in, I plug it in, hang it on the wall, and I'm done paying tax on it once I bought the original thing.
So Governor DeSantis believes that property taxes should not be an unpredictable burden on Florida homeowners. I mean, how are tax assessments even determined? Do the actuaries have the formulas correct? I mean, what's stopping the government from changing the laws and slowly ramping up the taxes again to we're right back where we are 5 or 6 years from now? Who knows? But DeSantis is clear on his philosophy. He believes these taxes are somewhat unfair, if not outright unfair, and lowering property taxes will create a more affordable and attractive state for residents and help residents stay above water, particularly those on a fixed income. Now, he argues that homeowners shouldn't feel like they're renting property from the government due to the high property tax rates. Now, I wholeheartedly agree with that philosophy. Philosophically, I've paid off my house. I paid off the land that it sits on, and I shouldn't have to write a check to the government for $9,000 or $10,000 a year just to have the right to live in my own house. That seems unfathomable to me. Now, I'm not unreasonable. I realize there needs to be a source of taxation to provide services. But where does that stop? That's the thing. Now, let's say my property taxes were $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and the homestead exemption was tied to inflation, and local governments stopped wanting more and more and more. We wouldn't even be having this conversation, we wouldn't even be making this video. This kind of pushback always happens when things go too far, and people don't buy the politicians' rationale behind it.
To me, the threshold question is, the tax relief needs to be Florida first. We need to focus on our Florida residents. We need to focus on, in this case, Florida homeowners, particularly our homesteaded homeowners, and we need to focus the relief there. I want Canadian tourists and Brazilian tourists subsidizing the state and making it so Florida residents pay less taxes. I don't want to give Canadians a tax cut. So we understand that this is something that is really significant, and one of the things we're looking to do and work with the legislature on is authorizing, and I have a lot of authority as governor under both the Constitution and statutes, but authorizing a nice, crisp DOGE effort for local governments where you'd have the keys to the kingdom, you'd be able to look at the payments, the contracts, and then publicize this. Because if you look at the budgets, it's very opaque. There may be a line item, you don't know where that money's being funneled, as we've seen with the federal government. It ends up going to all these different places. We have major counties in this state that have had massive expansions of their budgets just in the last 5 or 6 years. And the reason is they're getting more revenue from the property tax. And do those budgets need to grow by that much? I think the answer is probably going to be no, but we want to be able to do that so that voters can see, because they'll tell you, oh, they can't do property tax relief because then you're not going to have any police or anything. That's not true, okay? That is not true, but that's what they'll say. They'll say, you're not going to have any more schools, you're not going to do it. No, it's not true. But I think we can show that through the DOGE effort. So we want to be able to do that, and then, of course, build up to having very robust constitutional protections.
So critics of serious reform and people that just hate Governor DeSantis will say, Florida will fall apart. Oh, where would the missing revenue come from to keep the state safe and healthy? Well, Governor DeSantis proposes shifting reliance toward alternative revenue sources, including increased sales tax revenue generated by Florida's booming tourist industry. He also supports a gradual reduction in property tax dependency by leveraging the state's surpluses and using revenue from new business investments in Florida. The Florida government is at least looking at efficiency and alternative methods of funding, and that in itself is a good thing.
I very much appreciate those folks in the House that set that $5 billion target. That'll be more than we've ever done by a country mile. And if that is something that's in the ball game, if that's something that they're willing to discuss, we'll accept that, but we'll come with a proposal to focus that $5 billion on reducing property taxes for people in Florida. And we have a chance. I know we want to get on the ballot, but we have a chance to do this year. So this would be kind of a opening salvo to what the main event would be in November of 2026. So with that $5 billion, I'm proposing that the legislature direct that to immediate relief for all Florida homestead owners. And if we do that, we would end up with about $1,000 in property tax cut for every homesteaded Floridian. And that will make a big, big difference. And part of the reason we're able to do this is, although property taxes are local, there is a portion of that is required local effort for state, for schools. We have a massive surplus. We can cover that through our normal budget reserves. We don't need to have people paying property taxes this year on that specific line item, so we would roll that back to zero. We'd also roll back some of the local lines and issue a rebate, and so that's how you end up getting to the $1,000 per resident or homesteaded property. And look, I mean, I know we have people that have investment properties. I'd rather focus it on the homesteaded Floridians and the Florida residents. So that's where it'll be, and that's how you get to a number that's pretty significant. For middle class, $1,000 tax rebate, that's a substantial portion of their property taxes. I know some of the wealthier folks, that may not be quite as much, but focusing on the middle class folks, this is going to be a really, really big deal. And again, we think it'll be likely about $1,000 per homesteaded property. Now, I think most you guys and the realtors know better than ever how this process works and the notices and all that. So this would be something that we would see percolate throughout the year and end up with end of the year trim notices. But I think it's something that would be really, really meaningful. And if it's passed into law now, people would know that this is coming down the pike very, very soon. But anything that we're rolling back, we do have the funding to be able to backfill. So don't anyone tell you, oh, they're taken from schools. No, we'll fund that. We have a big surplus. We've quadrupled the rainy day fund since I've been governor. Just over the last 6 years, we've paid off 41% of our state's debt since I've been governor. We're in good shape, and we'll be able to make it work. And we want to use that.
So, in the short-term plan, Governor DeSantis is advocating for immediate tax relief through legislative measures. His administration is pushing for temporary reductions in property taxes, or maybe even give every Florida resident a $1,000 tax rebate in 2025, utilizing the Florida's substantial rainy day fund to cover any potential shortfalls. Now, this fund, which is designed for economic downturns and unexpected expenses, ensures that essential services still continue while giving homeowners some kind of financial relief. It's great that this state even has a surplus, because many states do not, because this state's well managed financially. Now, I do wish our government would shift some of that money toward funds for a hurricane relief type of fund, but I digress there. It's going off subject. Sorry.
Ultimately, as I said, this is just the opening salvo. We want to have a constitutional amendment on property taxes, and that's going to require a lot of effort. It's going to require us to do the DOGE through the balance of this year so that voters see that this can actually be done and that they have an ability to both shrink their own budgets but also shift tax burdens to our tourists and our non-Floridians. And I can tell you, it's like people say, oh, people aren't going to come to Florida for this reason, this reason, this reason. It's like, they said the Canadians weren't going to come. And I'm with my kids, we were down in spring break, and we're at Legoland, and all these people coming up to me for pictures, which is fine, I normally do that, and I'd say like 80% of them were Canadians. And I'm like, I thought you guys weren't coming to Florida anymore. Oh no, we love Florida. No, so we're going to continue to be a destination, and we are excited about doing that. Now, we are a low tax state. We have the second lowest per capita state taxes in the entire country. Of course, we have no income tax, and even though we rely on sales tax, our sales tax is basically middle of the pack. California, they have this really stiff income tax, but they also have the highest sales tax. They have an 8% sales tax statewide. It's higher in a lot of localities. So we've done a good job on that, and the property taxes are basically local, but we rank middle of the pack on property tax rates throughout the country. I don't think that's good enough. I think we have an opportunity, particularly given that we draw a lot of people, to really, really make an impact on property taxes.
Now, what's also interesting is that Governor DeSantis is not stopping at short-term relief. He has proposed a long-term fix in the form of a state constitutional amendment that would cap property taxes and potentially restructure how local governments find funding. Now, if that's successful, the amendment would provide much more predictability for homeowners and make Florida an even more competitive and attractive state with other low-tax states. I mean, let's face it, look, $300 to $400 less in a monthly expense would be a huge boon for any middle-class household or those on fixed incomes. So, will Governor DeSantis' plan work? Supporters argue that his approach makes homeownership more stable and attractive in Florida, while critics worry the alternative revenue sources won't be enough. One thing's for certain, the debate is just starting, and I hope by 2026, everything is wrapped up and we have a plan moving forward. I think it will, and I think it'll help homeowners in Florida. But let me know what you think. Leave me a comment below, and if you want to talk about anything real estate related, Port St. Lucie, tradition, contact me. My information's on the screen and in the description below. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.